order.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the committee to order. And at this time, if there are any public comments. Oh, well, we need to take a roll call, correct?
Yeah, okay, roll.
Okay, so Kevin Dayton,
Here.
we don't have anyone from South County non-urbanized. Juan Pablo Lopez, Steve Macias,
Present.
Bobby Merritt,
Present.
and we know that Sid Williams is absent today. Christine Winnie. So what happened?
We do not
Not
have a
have a-
quorum, so we will be meeting as a committee of the whole and cannot take action, but you
Right.
can receive and hear all items on the agenda.
Okay. So at this point, if there are any public comments on matters that are not on the agenda. Hearing none, I'd like to move on to action item 4.1 and receive program updates from Christy.
They cannot act.
Oh, it's.
Good afternoon, Oversight Committee members, MSD staff, and any members of the public. Again, I'm Christy Sagabo, Mobility Services Manager. Next slide, please. So today I will provide update information on Measure Q funded program, such as the rides, paratransit eligibility, taxi voucher program for seniors, persons with disability, and veterans. Next slide, please. Also, I'll go over the travel training program, transportation reimbursement incentive program trips, the Navigator volunteer program, and the veterans and senior shuttles. Next slide, please. So MST Rides is the complimentary service to MST's regular bus services for individuals who are prevented from using the regular bus for all or some of their trips. There is an interview to be completed in order to qualify for the program. New applicants gets interviewed in person. And then for those who are reapplying or recertifying, that is completed by phone. I did notice that there is a typo in my presentation slides. So it should say FY24 eligibility, and then under registered, it should say FY24, not FY23. So there were 549 new applicants and 133 recerts. In total, we registered 682. And overall, the program ended with 2,755 registered clients. Next slide, please. So for the taxi voucher program, there are 3 categories for the taxi voucher program. So it's taxi voucher for seniors, for persons with disabilities, and then for veterans. To qualify for the senior voucher, a senior will need to provide proof of age, 65 years old or older. The voucher for disability, it's for someone who is registered for the rides program. And then to qualify for the veterans voucher, individual will need to show proof of veteran status. We have 10 distribution sites and 3 sign-up locations for the senior vouchers, 3 distribution locations for persons with disabilities, and 4 for veterans voucher. Each voucher has a value of $14. Taxi companies who are licensed to operate with the Monterey County Regional Taxi Authority, MCRTA, will accept taxi vouchers. Participants in the program pays the $3 copay with the voucher for one-way trip, up to $17 meter reading. Any amount that exceeds the $17 is the participant's responsibility to pay. So in FY24, there were 64% trips taken by seniors, 34% taken by persons with disabilities, and 2% by veterans. Also, 64% of participants are seniors, 30% is persons with disabilities, and 6% are veterans. As of July 2024, the taxi voucher for seniors expanded in King City. So residents of King City who are 65 years old or older are now able to request to receive taxi vouchers at the City Hall. And trips are currently provided by Yellow Cab, because Yellow Cab is the only cab company licensed to provide or operate in King City. Also, for those individuals who lives in Salinas and those who are registered in the rides program who receives taxi vouchers are now able to request vouchers by phone and email. Next slide, please. So travel training is teaching individuals or groups how to use the MST bus system. Training includes planning a trip, safe path of travel, how to buy and use bus fare media, board, riding and existing the bus with mobility aid or mobility device, or how to simply handle unexpected situation while riding the bus, like road construction or missing a stop. So travel training is open to anyone interested in learning how to ride our bus system. We travel trained persons with disabilities, veterans, seniors, students, individuals who are new to the MST bus system. So 553 persons participated in our travel training in FY24. This is a combination of individuals who received one-on-one training and then individuals who received training as part of group travel training. Next slide, please. And then moving on to our transportation reimbursement incentive program, TRIPS. So this is a volunteer driver program where qualified participants in the program is able to choose and designate their own volunteer driver. The driver could be a family member, caregiver, a neighbor, or a friend using their own vehicle to provide transportation. And then in return, MST reimbursed the participant in the program for the miles traveled to pay their volunteer driver. So the reimbursement rate is 62.5 cents per mile up to 240 miles a month, but it's capped at $100.50 per month. So to qualify, participants must be 65 years or older, a person with disability registered in the rights program, or a veteran, and must live more than 3/4 of a mile from MST's nearest bus stop location. So currently the farthest participant we have enrolled in this program lives out in Parkfield. There were 133 participants in the program in FY24. Next slide, please. The program had 9,939 reported trips. Overall, the program reimbursed 37,254 total trips since it started. The pie chart is a breakdown of the overall type of trips the participants are getting reimbursed for. So 39% is for shopping, 28% is attending community centers, 24% for medical appointments, 7% family, visiting family and friends, and then 2% travel to and from work. Next slide, please. The Navigator Volunteer Program, this is our volunteers who helps promote MST services and mobility programs to the public and provide bus service experience feedback to MST or work alongside MST staff at MST events. Volunteers are assigned at senior centers also throughout Monterey County to regularly do outreach activity. Locations include the Aldemeyer Center in Seaside, Shoals Park Senior Center in Monterey, Sally Griffin Center in Pacific Grove, Junsei Oaks Senior Apartment Community in Marina, Chispa Senior Housing Community Centers in Salinas, such as Sherwood Village and Los Abuelitos, the Firehouse Senior Center in Salinas, and they also participate in the Meals on Wheels of Salinas Valley County and North County social events. Right now, we only have 4 volunteers and in total had volunteered of 559 hours in FY 24. The photos you see in my presentation slide here, the first one is the National Volunteer Month, takes place in the month of April. The volunteers were recognized during the MST board meeting for their volunteer work and service dedications to MST. So captured in that photo there is our volunteer Dennis, Christopher, and Juvenal, and then with board chair Mary Ann Carbone and Lisa Reinheimer, who is present here today. And then the second photo, back in May, MST hosted its annual Senior Transit Day at the Mobility Center, where our volunteers were present to help out with the event. And then captured in that photo is again our volunteer Christopher, and then Jeremy, who didn't attend, was unable to attend the Volunteer Month's recognition. Jeremy, and then with mobility specialist Rolanda and Leslie, and then our general manager, CEO Carl Sidoric. Next slide, please. So last is the MST senior and veterans bus lines. These are bus services open to everyone to ride, but it's designed with the input from seniors and veterans community. The senior bus line serves locations to include senior housing, hospital, shopping, and medical offices. Line 91, 94, 95, and 96 generated 49,785 boardings. And then the Veterans Bus line serves locations to include the VA and DoD clinic, and then Veterans Transition Center. Line 61 had a total of 19,114 boardings. Next slide, please. And that ends my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any question you have.
Yes, I do have a couple of comments. First, I would like to get the slide presentations with the corrected 2024. Also, on the following slide, I think that there's a word disable and it should say disabled on it, if you could change that too. And the reason why I ask is, as we know, this Measure Q is going to be sunsetting soon. And it's important to have all of our tables and charts updated so that we can distribute to people as needed. I also think it might be good as you prepare these. I like to see trends, for example, on that where you had the fiscal year 2024. It showed that there was improvement from year to year. Very important to show that. I think that every slide should be made with the mindset of you're providing this to somebody who thinks their money is being wasted on Measure Q, and we need to show them that it's actually making a difference for people. For that person from Parkfield, great testimonial from that person, I'm sure, because that's somebody who lives out in a remote area who's being helped by this program, and you know what, that's a good thing. Nobody's going to say, oh, that person is exploiting the system. So that's just my thinking about these sorts of reports here, that they need to be presented in a way to convince the public that Measure Q is a worthy program. So more bar charts, more multi-year trends showing improvement, that sort of thing. If you have a testimony, I like to know about the people from Parkfield and other rural areas who have difficulty getting access. That's a great thing to tell people. So that's just my thinking on that matter. I think that we could make a better, at this point, we got to really focus on our presentations about how the money is being spent, because people are going to be looking at it closely.
Any other comments?
Christy, if I may, when did the trips start? I know you mentioned 37,000. Is that over 8 years ago?
2018.
2018. Okay, so that's a good number. Then the 6250, is that a number MST came up with for the reimbursement? It's not quite LHR and not quite.
Yes, you're correct. 62 cent per mile. That is actually the 22 federal reimbursement rate. So we haven't increased the reimbursement rate since then.
Yeah, I think it's up to 67 cents.
Yes, it is at 67 now.
Any other questions? Thank you, Christie.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 4.2. And it will be Lisa.
Yes, thank you. This is a report on the Measure Q budget that was adopted by the MSC Board of Directors back in June. We're estimating a collection of 13.38 million over this current fiscal year, 25. And next year, we're expecting an increase to have that number. I guess I don't have that number right in front of me. At any rate, the amount of this year is about 3.1% over last year's revenues. So we're doing fairly well, keeping up with what we need to. You just heard a presentation on the Measure Q revenues and where they're being spent. So it's all of those programs that Christie talked about. Most of it is going to the MSC Rides program, the door-to-door service, and the remaining is going to all the programs that Christie and her team are diligently deploying to our community. So let's see, in FY 26, next year, we are anticipating total revenues of 13.9 million. 13.7 of which are coming from Measure Q. So all in all, we're doing fine. No capital expenditures are anticipated this year, but for the next fiscal year, we're setting aside just under $200,000 for the local match requirement for federal funds for some replacement vehicles. This is a pretty typical thing that we have to do when the vehicles reach their useful life. We need to replace them. So that's what we're anticipating in 2 years from now. I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have. Andrea is also here. She's our finance manager. And if you have technical detailed questions, she'll be able to help me out.
Just out of curiosity, and I apologize for not going into too much detail on the budget at this point. I'm curious about marketing and if you're planning on increasing your marketing costs so that you can attract more riders as well. I mean, I know I'm over at Meals on Wheels Community Center, which is formerly the Sally Griffin Active Living Center. And, we have some riders come in, but we could sure use a lot more and support a lot more usage. Part of that is a marketing effort on your part of it is a marketing effort on our part. I'm happy to work together to make that happen.
So it looks like advertising and marketing for rides is 5,000, and for Measure Q funded programs is 50,000, so 55,000 for this current year.
Mhm.
And then again, 55,000 for next year. I'm not sure I know the exact amount from last year because I think it's combined with all of the other MST fixed route programs. Do you have a,
Yeah, it's kind of a specific question, but
we can get you the previous year for sure, but that's what we have in this fiscal year and next fiscal year for
Yeah.
marketing.
it's not a
A
criticism.
lot of
it's-
what we do in marketing for mobility is help with program brochures and sort of the outward look and feel of items. I think we also help out with some of the events like Senior Transit Day and something like that.
Yeah, and you come to the center too. And
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something specific that you want incorporated over this year, that's we can tap into the marketing budget. Just
Okay.
let us know.
Thanks.
See what we can do.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 4.3, which is Lisa once again.
Yes, now I've lost my page. Okay, so I think it was in April that we met last and talked about the Measure Q research, voter polling and possible renewal. And we said we were going to be doing some research and evaluation through our consulting team from Tolchin Research and a team of surveyors and what have you. And so we did that in about May of 2024. And so I'm going to go through this presentation that they prepared for us. We wanted to see, how likely voters would react to a number of different scenarios. So it's kind of interesting. So next slide, please. So it was a multimodal survey. We conducted about 1,200 likely November 2024 voters. Keep in mind, this was well before all the craziness that happened this last July with anything and everything under the sun related to politics. So it was late April, early May, live phone interviews, both in English and in Spanish. Of likely voters here, the margin of error 2.8% for fall of the 1,200 sample. Next slide. So what we like to do, next slide please, is check the general mood of the voters to see how they're feeling about certain things. And this one was, how do you feel things in Monterey County are going? Are they going the right direction? Are they on the wrong track? Do you not know? And so this was the general overall feeling of the voters surveyed. So 42% felt like things are going on the wrong track.
Just within the county, or is
Just within the county. Now we'll get into a little bit more detail here because this is just kind of not terribly useful information, except the mood of the voters is a little cranky. Next slide.
Is this Elu who has entered the waiting room? Is that somebody legitimate?
I have no idea. Scott, is there someone waiting in the waiting room?
Oh, yeah. Good call.
Okay, there
Now
we
it
go.
disappeared.
He took care of it. Okay, so then we wanted to dig a little deeper and see where that breaks down in terms of their background, ethnicity. So we looked at white voters, Latino voters, Asian voters, and looks like Latino voters are not very happy, not going in the right track for the most part, while white and Asian voters are a little bit more happy with where things are at. Next slide. And then we wanted to look at job performance by sort of comparable governmental entities. So we looked at ourselves, of course, the transportation agency for Monterey County and the supervisors, as well as your local city government. So MST did this also in 2014, and mostly people felt like we were, our job performance was really good in 2014. The same holds true in 2024, although less so. The transportation agency, people felt like they were doing okay, not great, but not horrible, sort of in the middle. And then supervisors, this again was 2014 and 2024. People felt like they were doing better in 2014 versus today. More people thought they were not doing so great versus doing great. And then your local city council, it was even more poor in terms of how people felt they were doing. We didn't go into any specific details here, but just general mood. So next slide. Next slide. So we wanted to test out an basic flat out extension of the 1/8 of a cent sales tax renewal. And we, read them this summary. Should MST continue providing this? Yes or no? And just basic statement. Yes, with lean was 81% of the voters said yes. With lean no, 15%. So that we felt like was a really good indication that a possible renewal would be a pretty easy win for us. Next slide. And then we wanted to see if we could get support for a 1/4 cent. Double that, and that would be an increase plus the renewal, essentially. And we still got a pretty good response rate, 74% versus 23%. Next slide. And then we wanted to test out an alternative to a retail sales tax. So we asked about support for a $65 per parcel tax. And that one came in at a solid no. We have to get 2/3 supermajority for a yes. So this one came in at a, question has been asked and answered, let's move on. This is just a no-go from a voter standpoint. So we're not going to pursue that any further. Next slide. So we wanted to compare these. So the 1/8 cent is on the left. The renewal and increase is in the middle, and then the 65 parcel tax on the right-hand side. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so we're comparing the Measure Q and 1/8 cent renewal vote. When we did our Measure Q tracking poll in 2014, and the Tolchin Research Group was the same one who did it for us in 2014, so they had some, history and numbers for us. So 72% is actually what we got for the final vote. So for a new one, we'd be at 73, or a renewal, and that, I'm sorry, no. For the election results, we got 73%, and then an 1/8 cent renewal now would be at 75%, which is not bad, but there's detail that I'll go into in a minute. Keep going. Next slide. Okay, so what we did was we asked the initial question, and then we tested out some verbiage after we explained what was going to happen, and it kind of went down after that. So let's look at this 75% initial vote. People were like, yeah, that sounds great. And then we explained it, and they're like, well, I don't know, we dropped off by 3%. And then the final vote after the negative campaign messaging went down to 66%, right? So to me, this says, just ask the initial question, don't follow up with anything, you're good to go. Next slide. So similar type of scenario with the renewal and the increase. It did well. We explained it didn't do as well. And then when the negative side of the message came around, it fared less well. Next slide. And let's go past the 65 parcel tax. That's a no-go. Next slide. So here are the drop-off groups on the renewal to the renew increase. Republican women age 55 and older were the group, along with Republican women in general, were the group that after they heard what the sales tax would be for, and then heard the negative messaging after that, dropped off a tremendous amount. Followed by the others, but mainly it was the Republican women and the older generation thereof. Next slide. So what would be the components of the measure? Next slide. So this is the messaging that did really well. It's life-saving trips, life-sustaining for seniors, people with disabilities, including appointments to dialysis. It would protect and maintain transit for disabled military veterans, for the older folks, people with disabilities, essential trips, et cetera, et cetera. So these were the messages that that seemed to help more with a yes vote. Next slide. Here are some tier 2 messages that don't that are okay, but don't get us as far as we need to. Interestingly, there's a lot of push in California, in the US and the world around to tackle global climate change, greenhouse gas emissions. We pulled that at the bottom here, help maintain MST's fleet of clean fuel and fuel efficient vehicles which reduce harmful emissions. It wasn't a top selling point necessarily. So next slide. And then the worst performing, it helps reduce traffic congestion, helps tourism, helps local funding, et cetera. Helps, and then to the zero emissions, the 2040 mandate, we have a mandate to convert our entire fleet to zero emission vehicles, and that didn't poll very well, even though we have to do it. So those were the elements that didn't help get us more votes. Next slide. So more positive messaging, keep going. Like last time, if you were around last time in 2014, we were able to be successful because we were able to hone in our message and our projects on those that help seniors, people with disabilities, veterans, etc. So these are still the messages that perform well. Continue those services for seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, etc. Okay, next slide. Tier 2 messaging, the cheap alternative to driving. It's extending the sales tax to fund transit services, etc. Accountability doesn't quite rise to the level as the tier 1. Next slide. And then local funding, budget cuts at the federal and state level. We're, helping ourselves. That doesn't do as well. Rising costs. Okay, well, fuel and parts and everything goes up for transit services. That didn't seem to, the voters didn't seem to care all that much about that. And then again, the zero emissions, although it seems to get a lot of attention, apparently it doesn't poll very well. Next slide. Negative messaging. Taxes, taxes, taxes. It's not a priority. Transit services aren't a priority right now. We need to think about other things like homelessness, public safety, crime, housing, water. There are any number of other issues in Monterey County that people can care about. Sometimes public transit, much to my dismay, is not the top priority for everyone. And we need to spend more money on roads instead of on transit. It's another negative messaging. Next slide. So I would say overall, we're in a pretty good place, although right now for MST, it's not the right time for us to be trying to tackle another voter initiative. And because it was so positive with the renewal and potentially an increase, we go after another election cycle. And we'll keep an eye on the voters and see what their mood is over the next couple of years and see when the appropriate time is to get on one of those ballots. The other thing that I should mention is that if we were to increase to a total of a quarter, we would more than likely need special legislation to increase the cap, because there are some of the cities within Monterey County that have already reached their cap of 10%. So we would need to figure out that scenario. But certainly renewal at a longer duration seems very doable from the voter polling. So maybe it's not 15 years, maybe it's 30 years, maybe it's until ended by voters type of thing. So that's where we're at. That's what the voters told us, so it's usually good to listen, because when we did this last time, the vote came out almost exactly as the polling had indicated. I think I'm done with the presentation. Next slide. Next steps. I just told you what the next steps are. Okay, so I'm good.
So what was the rationale for the 0.25% increase?
Well, the rationale for the 0.25% increase was that we could fund some additional services on the fixed route side of things. We could potentially provide, for example, more, right now, we can only provide a certain percentage to the fixed route side of things, and we don't have the general support, although there are a number of counties in California that have transit supportive sales taxes for general public transportation, not just our mobility programs and rides. So that was the thought process there. Plus, you know, cost increase. Revenues don't necessarily always keep pace with inflation and cost increases.
And one other question, the last election cycle that this would be able to be put on.
Yeah, so it sunsets in 2030, so we could go on a 2026, 2028. What the conventional wisdom says is that you're more successful with this type of special tax when it's a hotly contested presidential race. We did it in 2014 on an off cycle,
Right.
and we're still successful. So is past behavior a prediction of future behavior? Not necessarily, but it's a data point.
So is the sample,
Go ahead.
so is the sample size pretty inclusive of the entire county of Monterey, or?
Yeah, that was
is
the
it-
criteria. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that, you know, we're not just serving white people, you know, in English, because that's not our population. Our population is much more complex and diverse than that. So we wanted to get Spanish speakers, we wanted to get Republicans, Democrats, independents, we wanted to get Latinos, white people, Asians, any number of people that are, the only real criteria at the end of the day was, are you a likely voter? Right? But we did want to have that cross section as well.
Then I wasn't here in 2014, but is the sample size about the same as the previous time?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I suspect it was, but I can get back to you on that.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. At this time, I don't see any other business and
Through the chair, you do now have a forum present, that Director Wayne is here, so you
Very
want to
good.
take
We
the
can go-
consent item.
right, so. We'd like to approve the minutes of the April 22nd committee meeting minutes. There,
Make a motion.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
And you'll do
Any opposed?
any opposed? No, I didn't.
Motion carries.
Carries.
It appears there's someone on Zoom. I don't know if that's a
Robert.
public comment or not.
Oh, with the hand up. Yes. If we could hear from Robert.
Hi, my name is Robert Berner. I own Pacific Gardens Inn down on Asilomar. And I'm sorry, I don't have a complete agenda, but I did want to get a chance to talk about something I didn't see on the agenda, or maybe it is, I'm not sure. But it's about a bus stop, an additional bus stop down here that's needed, sorely needed by my housekeepers and some of the neighbors in the area, and even our hotel guests, and of course, the hotels around me. So at some point that this gets interjected in the meeting, I would like to be able to talk about it.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Or to,
You can direct him to the staff and for the regular MST meeting. I don't think that
Right,
falls within
yeah,
the purview of
right.
the
of our
Oversight
committee,
committee.
yes. All right,
Yeah, I don't know if the speaker has already reached out to MST staff about that, but we definitely have a customer service portal that they can ask for you know, a bus stop on our website, and then we will follow up on that particular customer service report.
thank you.
That's one way of doing it.
All right. Could we hear from Robert once again?
Hi, thank you. I've done, and I've approached Joe Emilio, who is our representative on the board with you. And his recommendation was to attend or Zoom into this meeting. So I have been working with someone at MST, very nice people, I must say. But they referred me to Joe. And so I'm at a loss at what's next. Am I at the wrong meeting?
Yeah, so this is the Measure Q Oversight Committee meeting, which reviews the finances and expenditures of the Measure Q fund, which that's fine if that you're at the meeting. I am aware of your communications with Joe Emilio, and I do know that staff is working on your request. So when it's resolved, I imagine they will get back to you. So it sounds like you're already in communication with our staff, so that's great.
Okay, so then I will leave you to your meeting. I apologize for the interruption.
No worries.
Thank you.
At this point,
There's nothing else on the
yeah,
agenda.
with this, I